I was born ready. I was. Um, I'm ready. Oh, you hit the button. From Calexico to Nunavut, from the Aleutian Islands to Newfoundland, through those weird statuey like electricity things at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts. It's the Dynasty Post with bigz and Grindberg. Hit the intro. Producer! Welcome to the Dynasty Pulse with bigz and Grindberg. He is Grindberg. I am bigz. Tonight on the Dynasty Pulse, we are doing a post-NFL draft, rookie mock draft, and we're excited about it. We got a special guest.
Yes, we do.
He is one of, and I got to cover up the overlay so you don't see who it is. He is one of the architects of the UN score over at the Undroppables. I call it the Unscore, and nobody's going to stop me. The most comprehensive wide receiver model, the most important wide receiver model, the single most important document for you to own in this fantasy season. Go over to the Undroppables and cop that shit. He is, like us, new to the Undroppables, but has incorporated himself very well into the team, and it's a pleasure to have him on. I'm talking, of course, about Dan Whisner.
Yeah, Wiz, welcome on, buddy.
Sorry. I'm talking, of course, about Dan Whisner.
That's a nice little intro like there. I like how it's specialized for the guest there.
That's courtesy of T. Seal, Travis, Undroppables graphics department.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best in the business.
Yeah, he did our overlays. He does our intro video. The guy has done a lot for us, and you know him very well too, Wiz. But tell our viewers. We talked about the Undroppables, but tell us more about what you do for them and where they can find you and all your stuff.
Yeah, sure. So for anybody that doesn't know me, you can see my handle down there at the bottom. That's actually just recently changed. But yeah, I've been a part of the Undroppables here for just a few months, like right after January. And these last few months we've been, bigz kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier there. But we've been working on the UN score quite a bit, and we just dropped that earlier this week. So really excited about some of the feedback there that we've gotten, over the course of the last couple of days there. And again, it's something that we worked on pretty hard, Coder, myself, Chalk, Jax, Dukes, Trav. It was a real good team effort. And again, I just want to kind of highlight that while it is, like a nice tool that we've put together, just incorporate it into your process, right? It's another thing that you can use to evaluate players. But yeah, go feel free to check it out over at the undroppables.com. And, outside of that, just been getting some podcasts together. I'm on Patriots Uncovered with Dan Bradley. And then, obviously Trav and I do Unravel together, but really excited to join you guys here on the Dynasty Pulse tonight.
Yeah, man. It's awesome to have you.
Little cross-platform pollination. We got three uncovered hosts in the building right now. That's crazy. All right. We're utilizing those connections. We're ready to rock here. We got a full draft room. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, I'm going to start the draft, and then I'm going to share the screen first before I do that, because I screwed up last time and I didn't present the draft screen. So let's.
You guys, you think Caleb's going first?
He should.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Okay, are we ready to start?
Let's go.
All right.
Turn off the bell. Turn off the speaker. Yeah.
There we go. Okay, we can see this.
Wait, what? Caleb Williams. Standard 99.9% of the 101s.
And just to confirm for the people here, guys, this is Superflex.
It is, yeah. It's Superflex, Titan Premium. We're doing 4 rounds for everybody, which is kind of pretty standard at this point. And all the rookies are looks like they're relatively good in ADP here. So, we'll see what happens. We have number 2 slot right now, who's not quite logged in yet. Hopefully
there.
jump in right away.
Come on, guy.
So, Wiz, I think we drafted a couple days ago in, I think, the exact same position. I was in the 3 spot. You were in the 4 spot.
Yep.
What do you like in that position? Like, are you hoping for somebody to slip to you? Like, are you just playing like whoever falls kind of situation as far as, or who would your ideal position guy be in this spot right as I pick him probably?
Yeah, so it's funny you just went ahead and took Malik Neighbors, because the guy that I was going to talk about was Jaden Daniels, actually, because I think, look, I love those guys that just went, right? I'm huge Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors guys. And, looking at the landing spot for Neighbors, obviously it's not super ideal at first, but I think from a PPR perspective, he's going to have a pretty nice floor there. But, just with the QB installation that we've kind of seen, that the way that value kind of holds for some of those really high draft capital QBs, and then just having somebody like, Jaden Daniels that's got a really high floor with the rushing, I've got no problem go ahead and taking Jaden Daniels at the 104.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
have the 2 and 3 in my single quarterback home league, and I'm considering just grabbing him there. His performance last year, his production at LSU last season was historic. It was an historic level, and I mean that's going to play. It's going to play in the NFL.
Yeah, and especially, like the 3 might be a little bit rich for me there, but like Biggs, I get what you're saying, because like in 1 quarterback leagues, you really want those game changers, like from a rushing perspective, right? And that's what Jaden can provide you. So
for me in that position, I prefer the safer pick, the insulated pick, like you mentioned. I just think I actually really like that landing spot for Malik Neighbors. I said that on the Undroppables live stream. I just really enjoy. I just think that it was one of the better landing spots for him, honestly, because he's going to be utilized. He won't get as many touchdowns. Like, he won't be in as a good of position to score a lot of touchdowns, but who else does Daniel Jones have to throw to, really? Wan'Dale Robinson, he might be a force, but Malik Neighbors is
son of a bitch.
Everything. And
how did I get sniped already by Shackelford? Come on.
Oh, well, Dev is a good fantasy player. He knows his stuff, and he's another shout out to Dev, because he's an undroppable that is an unsung hero as well in the background doing a lot of stuff.
Wow, Biggs, explain yourself.
I love Ladd McConkey. I think that he landed in the ideal spot in I was going to say San Diego, in the Chargers offense. I think he's going to be Justin Herbert's best friend. I think he's going to be targets leader from the beginning. Every time Justin Herbert looks up, he's going to see Ladd McConkey open, and everybody else struggling to get there. He doesn't have much competition. He doesn't have competition from running backs catching the ball. He doesn't have competition from tight ends catching the ball. He's going to make an impact immediately. In another draft, I took him over Odunze. I had the 8 in that one. I don't like Odunze's situation, even though he's going to overcome at a certain point. I really love Ladd McConkey, and I like him better than Worthy and Thomas. I'm looking for wide receiver here, and I'm not. He's not coming back around to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I think Ladd got one of the best landing spots for rookies. Yeah. I honestly wouldn't be surprised. Like, I think he's easy rookie wide receiver 3, honestly, from a scoring perspective this year. And then the other thing is, like, I wouldn't be totally surprised where if things go, somewhat awry in New York, if, Ladd ends up as the rookie wide receiver 2 from a scoring perspective. That's not how I'm ranking them for Dynasty. I'm just saying for that rookie year, he got a fantastic spot. I was just surprised to see it over May there, but hey, I love the conviction.
So we've talked about this in rookie drafts. The last one that we did, we talked about being in mocks, and in mocks, like, you don't have a team that you're drafting for to create need for you. So it's basically like a BPA situation. I'm taking the best guys that I like that are there that I'm not going to be able to get later. Because I don't know. I mean, I could have like Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, and then Josh Allen on the bench. Like, I don't know what I need.
God, Grindberg.
I know it's a hard one, especially at that, that's kind of where that tier completely falls off and breaks.
Yes.
I say after the Knicks and Benson kind of pick, it's kind of pick your poison there. With Brian Thomas, I think Keon Coleman's kind of a reach there in the first round. I have him kind of outside of that tier. I would say, if Keon Coleman was where you were picking right now, Wiz, I'd be interested there, but I'm not interested in the first round for Keon Coleman yet with these other guys that are there. But yeah, I think that's the biggest tier break. And if you can trade up into those picks, I think that's the way to go, or just hold off into the middle to early third round. There's a lot of value there if you can actually pinpoint the right guy in that range.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like that pick a lot there for you. That's definitely who I was going to go. I will go ahead and take Ricky Pearsall. This is a prime example for me. I think, kind of to your point, Grindberg, is that like if this was a real draft and I was sitting there at the 2-4 and somebody like Benson just went, that's where I definitely would have like ping the league chat and said, hey, I'm open for business, or I'll at least listen. Of course, Dev went ahead and took Javon Baker there. But like this is a tier where like I think after Benson, it starts this like one big flat tier that definitely goes like into the third round. So like specifically what I would do is, if I was at the 2-4, maybe try and find a team that's got like a late second and an early third or something like that, and see if they like somebody enough to come up and move up into that 2-4. Because given that I look at this as like one big tier, I'd almost rather have like two shots at a guy in this tier as opposed to just like one.
So I got a question for you, because Ricky Pearsall didn't perform at all well in the UN score. And I think, you know what I mean? Like he was at the bottom up there with, Xavier Leggett.
Second worst.
Yeah. Like, I mean, and with the draft capital that he got with San Francisco, you have to keep that in mind. So, when we're talking about the UN score, it's just another tool we're talking about when we are putting all our pieces together. It's not a ranking. It's just look at what can happen in the past. Look at this historical data and let's make some reasonable conversations about these picks, because, these guys are all being grouped in guys that are comparable. So you look at these comp groups and it's just such a great tool. And I just, really impressed with how it all came together. And just kudos to you guys. But I want to hear your thoughts on this Ricky Pearsall situation.
Yeah, no. So I think one thing that's important to keep in mind is like when you think about the UN score, like it's like strictly analytics based, right? Like that's what it is. There's no film element in it. So like if you're looking for any of that, and that's why guys like Pearsall get dinged, right? Like, there's no athleticism score in there or anything like that that's pulling in. And when you look at Ricky Pearsall outside of the analytics, like that's where people come in and start to kind of change their mind on him, right? Because, I think Matt Harmon had some really nice things to say about him from a perception standpoint. Brett Whitefield and some of the guys over at Fantasy Points really like him from a route running standpoint. And then obviously like he tested, much, much better from an athleticism perspective than I would have guessed. And then, that's where it's about going into the next steps, right? Like he landed with a super forward thinking coach that fits the players to the scheme, right? Like he puts them in the best chance to succeed. So like the fact that he landed with somebody with somebody like Kyle Shanahan, that lends me to like, gives me a little bit more confidence in him going forward. And then the other thing is that you're betting on here is that, I don't think it's actually going to be before this season, but I think in the next year, you're going to see one of Debo and Ayuk leave, right? My money would be on Debo. Especially with the Pearsall pick, just because I feel like, Ayuk is going to age better. And I just feel like Ayuk fits them a little bit more, because as Debo gets older, I don't think he's necessarily the same Debo. So that's kind of what you're betting on, right? Like taking a Pearsall here, you need to kind of accept the fact that, year one, you're probably not in for a lot of production, but, in the subsequent years, he's tied to a really good head coach and a really creative offense.
There's chatter that Debo's gone in June. He can be a June 1 cut and they save money.
Yeah, totally.
Which would explain why they've been trying to shop him for the last year, which they say that they weren't, but he says that they were, and all of the contract scuttle, but like before, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he leaves in June. But it does, to your point of like you look at the analytics previous to the unscore, and one of the greatest things about the unscore to me was that it validated a lot of the the production metrics that I was staring at, right? And so when it dropped and I got to look it over, it confirmed the things that I was thinking. I'm more analytically based. I'm less tape guy based. But when you take a production profile like he had, and you kind of you mix it in, I can't see it, right? Like, but then you look at, he was at Florida, and it might not have been the best landing spot, and San Francisco can bring the best out of him. So like I get the part where it's a piece of the puzzle and not like the be all end all of everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, Biggs. Is like it's a piece of the puzzle, and like there will be times like where like just because like I was a part of this project and Pearsall landed where he landed, like that doesn't mean I'm not going to own any Ricky Pearsall. Like well, clearly I just just took him in a mock, and that's where I think it's just making it like one piece of your process is kind of like a check. Is maybe it gives you an idea on a guy that you weren't previously in on to take a second look, or maybe somebody that you were super high on. It maybe kind of brings you down a little bit to say, hey, maybe there's a little bit more risk here or not, but
what it did do is it identifies guys that may not be on your radar, like a Tank Dell or a Puka Nakua like last year, where they scored really high on the model. So like a guy like Troy Franklin this year who could be coming in, and he's got a dream landing spot, in my opinion. I think that was a good landing spot. Yeah, maybe the draft capital isn't there, so he suffered in that realm, but he tested really well in our model, or in your model essentially, and I think it says a lot, and he's going to be a guy I'm going to have my eyes circled on because of that fact, because he's a guy that could show out if all those metrics fall into place for him.
Yeah, come on, Grindberg, sure. Own it. It's yours. It's yours too. I mean, we're part of the team. We listen to the podcast with Wiz and Jax and Wiz and Travis. Like, come on, we're part of it.
We are.
I will say, by the way, just get like this is a tough mock.
It's pretty sharp.
I didn't love like my options at 3-4 at all.
I was bad you grabbed McMillan because he's been lasting to the 3-8 for me, and that's been just fine.
I almost went Vidal, but it felt too early for Vidal. Like I love Vidal and I love the landing spot there, but just felt a little bit too early there.
Well, if you heard, if you heard, Dynasty Life today with Jackson and Theo, they were talking about the Vidal and where he would be comfortable taking them, kind of at the 3-4 turn. You know what I mean? And even at the 2-3 turn, and that's kind of like where you're looking at here. ADP, 27 roughly for those rookie for him. So kind of where he probably should be landing, especially with that landing spot he got. How much time do I have here? I got to pick somebody, I guess.
But also, we're looking at Dev, who's taking Javon Baker and Kamani Vidal, who are both darlings of like our Twitter
Oh my
sphere.
God, Grindberg, come on, man! I'm just getting sniped. God, I had them all queued up and ready to go.
It took me a while to find them in my queue. Sorry, I was talking.
Man,
I like my draft a lot, actually. I'm happy with this.
Yeah, I like what you've done for sure. Oh man, I mean, I got a backup, but like I was really excited to go some Tyrone Tracy there for sure. I'll take some Ray Davis.
I was between him and Tracy, but I think with the landing spot, that backfield is kind of wide open. Davis is a bit older, and that he's got some tread on his tires, but I mean he's got a good 1 or 2 years potentially in that offense that could be, he could potentially be the starter, and so that's kind of what we're going with in the 4th round here is some upside plays.
Yeah, I mean, look, once you get to this point in the draft, like you're banking on something like, can Ray carve himself out potentially towards the goal line, even though that's kind of in Josh Allen territory, right? Like he's that bigger back that could potentially do that outside of James Cook. But the play here for me is like if James Cook ever goes down, like it certainly seems like Ray Davis just gets inserted into a Josh Allen offense. And like these are the types of things that you're trying to kind of do in the 4th round, right? Like same with you, Grindberg, looking there at like Tyrone Tracy, I think he can cut into Singletary's work right away, but if he were to ever go down, like he's a really fun player, given that he can, he's got that receiving upside as well.
Yeah, agreed.
And big, same with you, right? Like the way I think about somebody like Garendo, right? Like obviously really not like a 2024 play, but like with Mitchell being
God,
an undrafted, Mitchell being a unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. If they end up moving on from him, he becomes, and they don't bring in anybody else. And Garendo does some nice things, at least from a practice squad perspective, this 2024 season. If he becomes the handcuff next year, like that's what we're talking about, like these elite handcuffs in the offenses that you want to attach yourselves to.
Or comes out and he's the single most athletic back in the 49ers backfield, they're going to get the ball in his hands. And so I like him for second half of the 2024 even, because I think that his athletic profile is going to show out. Will Shipley, I think, in an ideal world, I would flip those two picks as far as like what I see happening in 2024. I think Shipley is a little bit more of a long-term guy, but I really, really love his profile. I think he's going to probably be one of the, when all is said and done, after everybody's retired, I think Shipley's going to have one of the better careers of all of these guys.
I wish he didn't land with an Eagle,
Philly.
just because typically, like, we just don't see Jalen Hurts thrown to the running backs too much, and like obviously that's Shipley's calling card, but like interesting and fun player for sure.
And there could be an opportunity to, injury. He's an injury away. That backfield doesn't have a whole lot behind Shipley after that. So I don't mind him being in there. He was getting a lot of steam headed into the draft. People, especially a lot of people were he was going in the second round in rookie mocks before the NFL draft, and he slipped quite a bit, actually, when you think about the landing spot behind Saquon Barkley. But I do like Will Shipley. I mean, he can carve himself out a role, and we know that Philly likes to use their running backs. So, they use more than one, and that could be a factor.
One of the things that I pumped on shows throughout the last couple weeks with Will Shipley is if you took Jahmyr Gibbs and Will Shipley, their physical profiles, combine numbers, all of that stuff, and you stuck them next to each other, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. The difference is Shipley's a little bit bigger, but he's more athletic. And then Gibbs's landing spot. That was like his draft capital puts him far and away in the Lions' plans. Will Shipley, because of the draft capital, is a backup, period. But as far as physically, they both can do the same exact things, and Shipley is an excellent route runner and receiving running back. So I like the talent over situation play there. That's I like. And Garendo's is similar. Like he had athletic profile off the charts, and if he just gets a chance. And I think in the third and fourth round, that's what you're doing. You hopefully have guys that are going to fill out your starting lineup, and then you have your box of if he gets a chance. And I would have liked to have gotten a playable guy in the third round, but I just didn't see any. It was all chance guys.
It's definitely, slim pickings after those picks there, and you're kind of taking a stab. Me, I like Marshawn Lloyd as outcome. I think, he could potentially be a starter. Like he could potentially be a. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was saying I almost went him at the 3-4, so keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, this year is Josh Jacobs' year, but I think that he could still carve out a role as that third down back. We talked about his pass protection a little bit in our chat, and it's unproven. He wasn't there, but I didn't see Caleb Williams take a whole lot of sacks last year. So that could have been part of his elusiveness, but Marshawn Lloyd can be a big factor in that run game, in that passing game, and he could actually take on that role in 2025. So a guy that I could definitely have my eye on in Dynasty, and at that pick, he's worth a shot in my opinion, because he's got that speed score and some of those metrics. I was really high on Marshawn Lloyd heading into the draft, and I actually really like that landing spot for his future.
Yeah, and I think if you look at Josh Jacobs' contract too, like I think it came across like on the surface level at 4 years, 48 or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's really not that, right? Like they can get out of it as soon as, next year if they wanted to. I think there's, probably a little bit more dead money there for next year than they probably like. But I think realistically, 26, like there's a very good chance that they're out of that. And, when you look at some of the things that I kind of value from a running back perspective, right, is like missed tackles forced per rush and missed tackles forced per reception, right? Like, can you make guys miss essentially? And, the only running back in this class that was top 5 in both those for their career was Jonathan Brooks, who I love and will probably be talking about in a little bit. But the other guy that performed pretty well in both those was Marshawn Lloyd, right? So he was 6th in missed tackles forced per rush for his career for the class, and he was actually 3rd from a missed tackles forced per reception, right? So like you're seeing a guy that has shown an ability to make guys miss both in the receiving game as well as the rushing game. So yeah, I think there's like that, like Marshawn Lloyd has already been on a few of my teams.
Yeah.
Nice.
And other guys around those range too. You're really taking dart throws, and then it's just a matter of situation and who you feel, is gonna stand out to you. And that's a range where we're just like, let's get these 3rd round picks, hoard them up, because these are valuable picks right now. If you can scoop them up in your drafts, like I would be all over that, because if you can, get that value there, you're looking really good.
Well, I'm going to go through real quick, and I'm going to start with Wiz's draft. Jaden Daniels, Ricky Pearsall, Jalen McMillan, Ray Davis. I like it. I love the Jaden Daniels pick. I think he's going to be productive right off the bat. Ricky Pearsall came out with a really, really bad UN score, but Wiz really likes the position that he's in. Jalen McMillan, I was hoping would last until my pick. I got him at the 3-8 in our DTC listener league, which I was very happy with. I love Jalen McMillan. I thought he was going to be a great value coming in. He's better than Jalen Polk, I love Jalen McMillan a lot. And then Ray Davis has an opportunity to be the first and second down back in Buffalo at a certain point. I like that draft. So now, Wiz, what is your favorite draft that's not yours?
Yeah, no, definitely my favorite draft isn't even mine. Let's see here. I do like what Grindberg did. I mean, starting Neighbors, Benson, and then I'm not the biggest Roman Wilson guy, but in the 3rd round, like I don't hate that. And then I love Tyrone Tracy in the 4th.
He kept sniping you. Of course you love it.
Yeah. Man, some of the values, like really, I will say some of the values really spread out. Like, I love the way you started there, bigz. I'm a big McConkey guy. I probably would have taken Drake May like over him, but I understand what you're doing for the mock, right? Like we're not drafting for need or anything like that, and you're kind of flag planting there. Honestly, one of my favorite drafts, if we're just talking about like a player perspective, right? I think is definitely what Dev did. I think the Bowers landing spot is obviously not super ideal, but like I do think he's the type of guy that like kind of transcends like situation to a certain degree, right? Like I'm not saying, like I'm sure his ceiling is affected landing in a situation like the Raiders, but I still like that's the type of prospect that I'm going to bet on more oftentimes than not going forward. This is where it gets sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Real quickly to the landing spot defense. One of the things that makes Bowers great is not necessarily his target share, his opportunity, all that stuff. It's his yards after the catch. It's what he does when he gets the ball in his hands. So he doesn't have to have a great quarterback. All he has to do is have somebody that gets the ball in his hands, and he is going to create those opportunities for him. So I don't think it affects him as much as a whole lot of other people do. You don't look at the Raiders and go, oh, that's an ideal fantasy situation. But I think with Brock Bowers, it doesn't matter. He's going to make the most of wherever he's at. So I love the pick. I was hoping for him, and he just didn't last that one pick longer.
As a Raiders guy, I bet you were.
Yeah.
No kidding.
And then obviously, like, this is where it gets difficult. And this is a conversation that's been happening, I've seen happening quite a bit on Twitter and, some of the content that I've been consuming the last few days is, what do you do with, there's some priors here, some pre-draft, like rankings and takes that I think are playing a big part in the second round, because when you have guys like Javon Baker and Troy Franklin, who are day 3 wide receiver picks, granted, like super, super early picks, right? In day 4, going over first round guys and like Leggett, and, even like an early day 2 guy in Jalen Polk, It's a really interesting kind of scenario to see like how that's going to play out, because like right now, what this is telling me is like people are really steadfast in like their pre-draft convictions, right? Like
Yep.
a lot of people had, myself included, but like even some of the analysts, like a lot of people had Troy Franklin as like a top 50 player, right? And that the NFL obviously did not think the same. So it really does seem like there's a lot of those pre-draft notions that are being held on to from a Troy Franklin and even a Javon Baker, to see 2 day 3 guys go over like a Xavier Legette, right? Or even like a Jalen Polk. Yeah, it's just really interesting to see, like, when we look back on this a year from now, like, are we just going to be like, wow, like, how were we drafting day 3 wide receivers over like some of these first round or early second round guys? Or are we going to look back and say, this was like one of those first years where, hey, some people really held to their convictions, and because we don't love necessarily the wide receivers that came out at the end of the first in the Leaguettes of the world or whatever, it actually worked out. It's a fascinating kind of, case study, honestly.
Absolutely, and I think where the lines are going to be drawn is in opportunity versus draft capital, especially when you start talking about production profiles. Troy Franklin is a perfect example. He was highly rated based on his production on the field. He did lose some with his draft capital, but he's in a pretty damn good situation in Denver. Marvin Mims hasn't shown us anything. Cortland Sutton can be the target leader on that team, but there's already a baked-in relationship with Bo Nix and Troy Franklin. And if I'm a quarterback, that bias is going to show. The fact that I've worked with a guy for the last 2 years, that's going to carry a lot of weight when I go into a game time situation and knowing who I can trust, especially early. If Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin are on the field at the same time, and I'm Bo Nix, I'm very comfortable with Troy Franklin, and that's going to play a big part, I think, in what happens. Xavier Legette, on the other hand, is on a team that has been a trash pile and a quarterback that we're still waiting for a breakout to show that he's comfortable, but he's already got Adam Thielen that he knows is a go-to guy. So I think situation has a whole lot to do with picks like that, where draft capital may influence. And I think, to your point, we are going to be able to look back at the draft next year and go, God damn it, the NFL was right. Because the more that I get into, and I tweeted this a couple weeks ago, the more that I get into actual like analysis, the less I understand what the hell the NFL teams are actually doing. And there are certain aspects of the draft, like Brock Bowers being available at the 13 and the Raiders taking him. I can see that. I can see the justification in that. Trading up for certain guys, I don't know what they're doing. They obviously have much different information than what is available to us, and we'll see if that's more important than the stuff that we have.
That was deep, Biggs. That was a deep thought. You went off there for like 3 minutes on that. That was
3 whole minutes. Watch me
at
cook.
least.
Oh.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, guys, let's get into some of the situations that we really enjoyed seeing after this weekend. Let's start with you there, Wiz. What was your favorite rookie landing spot? I know we probably have some repeaters, like you probably saw the show sheet, maybe saw one of our guys on there, but who was your favorite guy as far as landing spot goes, and like what's going to happen with their team, their player, and the team impact that happens around them?
Yeah, so I think originally like mine would have been Biggs' choice. So I won't go ahead and spoil that, but that probably would have been like my 1A. But one of the 1Bs is another guy that I just kind of touched on briefly, and it's Jonathan Brooks. I think,
I was going to say that.
Yeah, the fact that he was able to still get, top 50 draft capital with the ACL injury just kind of says to me that, he probably would have been even higher than that. And when you think about the NFL and running backs, like obviously we saw, kind of a black swan event last year with having 2 running backs taken in that top 12. But like really top 50 draft capital these days for running backs is very, very solid. And I just think when you think about the landing spot, somebody like there, right? Like he's got Miles Sanders, who honestly could be out of the door by the time camp starts. There's already kind of rumors there that there's not a lot of guaranteed money left on that deal. And then, Chuba Hubbard's fine. I think he performed admirably last year. But like when you look at a guy like Dave Canales coming in there, what did we see from somebody like Rachaad White last year, right? And I think that's one of the things that I got really excited about, because Jonathan Brooks, yes, he's coming in with the ACL, but he's 20 years old, right? Like he's 20 years old, coming in super, super young. I mean, some of the guys we just drafted in this draft, like Tyrone Tracy, for example, he's 24 years old. Like he's really fun, but he's 24 years old. And like, that's almost at the age cliff for the running backs that we're starting to think about pivoting off them, right? So like to think about the fact that Jonathan Brooks has the receiving and rushing profile that we kind of covet from a fantasy perspective. And you look at the way that Rachaad White got used last year with Dave Canales. Rachaad was second in rushing attempts. He was second in routes run. He was seventh in targets, and he was fourth in receptions, right? So like in the post-draft presser, Canales has already talked about how Brooks can contribute in both the receiving and the rushing game. So it certainly seems like by the end of the year, that backfield should be his. And because he can contribute in both ways, I do think he's going to be, the bell cow roles in the NFL now are few and far between, but I do think he's going to find himself in one of those kind of few bell cow roles. And in a Dave Canales offense, we've seen that running back be very productive. So that's really why I love the landing spot for Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah. And when we think about it too, like Bryce Young did not have a great season last year, so they need to bring in some guys to take some of that pressure off him. Having a great run game is going to, be one of the most important things to help that young quarterback progress, because they put a lot of draft capital into Bryce Young. And I think, as far as people say that Jonathan Brooks was kind of a stretch for them as a pick, a reach type scenario, because, you're picking a running back coming off an ACL, like you mentioned,
sure.
That's a pretty big risk for an organization. And if you ask me, that is coming off of really bad draft the year before. If you think about what they gave up to get Bryce Young, they needed to make a move like there. And I think I personally like that, because they need to make Bryce Young more effective around him and taking that pressure off of him. I think they needed to make that move. I'm a little bit more interested to see what would have happened if Trevion Henderson would have been in the draft, because Jonathan Brooks was the clear cut kind of number one guy as far as talent goes, but that ACL really slowed that down. Trevion Henderson, maybe, declaring this year might have changed that too. And I think Jonathan Brooks got steamed up because of that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised. I have quite a bit of confidence that Trevion probably would have been the first RB taken off the board if he came out this year, which is why I was kind of surprised that he didn't. But, some of that NIL money is definitely changing things as far as some of these running backs coming out.
Yeah. Totally. The landing spot that I like, that was my favorite landing spot, it was actually Ladd McConkey. Biggs mentioned him earlier as a guy that he drafted. Ladd McConkey going to the Chargers, to me, was one of the best landing spots for him outside of the Chiefs or the Bills, in my opinion. He's such a fast burner off the line. He's dangerous after the catch. He's very good in those intermediate routes. He's a very good separator. He definitely won't win much downfield or in the contested catch battles, but he's going to be a very, very good slot receiver and the first read for Justin Herbert. With the draft capital and landing spot, McConkey immediately comes into the lineup and challenges as the number one wide receiver out of the gate. I don't think he even challenges for that spot. I think it's his. He's being compared to, Edelman, Welker, but he is so much more fast than them. He completely obliterated their scores in the 40. He ran a sub 4.4. He's, one of the best route runners in the class outside of, Marvin Harrison, Neighbors, and Adunze. And he probably won't get much further up my draft board, but he is actually my wide receiver 4. I like him more than even Xavier Worthy with Worthy's landing spot. I just think that McConkey is going to come in and he's going to be Justin Herbert's best friend. His yards per route run, we all know, is, incredible. Last season, 3.62. Really good metrics there. He's also, posts a really good quarterback rating when targeted, 136.3, which means, he gets targeted when the quarterback needs him the most. So when they need to convert a first down, he's a smart player too. He can attack on all three levels. And like I mentioned earlier, he won't win downfield, but I think his football IQ and route running prowess, it just makes him special. And I just really think he's just been a guy that has been coming up and steaming up the draft boards. And I think people compared him to Puka Nacua headed in the earlier months. But now it's that type of situation is not going to ever happen again. I don't think we're going to see a guy fall as far as Puka did. And I think Ladd McConkey has just landed in the perfect situation. And I think he's going to be very, very good for the long term here. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
There, Wiz?
No, I would totally agree. I mean, I think you could argue that he's got, probably like the second best landing spot almost, right? Like I think Neighbors, obviously, that's not me saying I'm ranking McConkey second, but fantastic landing spot with Justin Herbert. And, I know he's likely not winning downfield too much, but like there is a world here where I can kind of see him playing that Z role and moving to the outside at times and definitely making some plays downfield. But I think you're right. I think he immediately slots into Justin Herbert's first read in that offense. And just because of the lack of pass catching talent that they currently have, like I think he moonwalks into, 120, maybe even more targets. So I just think he's got a super high floor from a PPR perspective. And, I've been very critical of the volume to be expected for the Chargers from a passing volume perspective going forward, right? Like they bring in Jim Harbaugh, you bring in somebody like Greg Roman, but the reality is like they can still throw the ball 550 times in a season and Justin Herbert can lose volume, right? And those 550 targets, they're going to have to go somewhere. And, some of the best targets or the best target that Justin Herbert's going to have is Ladd McConkey. So yeah, Grindberg, I'm in full agreement with you. I think Ladd got a fantastic landing spot and, he's definitely somebody that, I'm trying to come away with in drafts.
Yeah. I mean, I would not be as high on a guy like, say, Marvin Harrison landing in the Chargers situation, because that just caps his floor. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think Marvin Harrison landing with the Cardinals is going to explode. I think him landing with the Chargers was not a great landing spot for him because of the Jim Harbaugh factor. I think they're going to run the ball quite a bit more. I don't think they're going to rely on wide receivers as much, but I do think a guy like Ladd McConkey will be a guy that they're going to target because of the way the system is going to go. They're going to rely more. They're not going to throw as much downfield, in my opinion. I think they're going to rely more on the running game. We know that already with the guys they brought in. They're going to be, trying to protect Justin Herbert a little bit more and not have to, rely on him as much. So I love that. And I think Ladd McConkey fits in there best. I think that might've been one of the better landing spots for any of these wide receivers because of the way they're shaped up, and Ladd McConkey is going to be solid.
Yeah. Yeah. The other guy that would have been really fun there too, just because of the way you can move him around, is Malik Neighbors would have been a lot in with the Chargers, but Ladd is a really good landing spot for him.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think he like Malik Neighbors would have been the top guy. I don't know what's happening with our bigz right now, but he's had some technical difficulties, and I'm not sure if we're gonna get to his. Oh, look, he's coming back in, but his device isn't connected. But we'll wait a couple seconds here unless he can get back on. But otherwise, we'll maybe wrap up the show. It's been awesome, man. Like, you want to tell the viewers? Oh, bigz, are you back in, or are you going to be able to make it? No? Okay. We're going to wrap up the show then. Why don't you tell the viewers there, Wiz, where you can find all your stuff moving forward? I know that we've had a huge project going on with the Undroppables, and you were a key cornerstone to that project. And it's been amazing to see you work your way up and flourish within the company there. And I'm super proud of your progression and what you've done with the Undroppables. Thanks, and it's really incredible to see your progression, and I've been a big fan of yours, and I follow your work. And tell everybody who don't know much about you where they can find all your awesome stuff.
Yeah, no, appreciate those kind words, man. In the few months that we've kind of been working together with the Undroppables, it's I've enjoyed your content as well. You're doing great stuff over with Chiefs Uncovered. So again, appreciate that. But yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter. I recently just changed my handle just a few days ago here, but it's at Dan J Whisner, Whisner. So yeah, find my work on Twitter. Usually you'll find me posting, some introspective threads a little bit. I'm pretty data focused. So now that the draft's over, we've kind of gotten through some of the UN score stuff. I'll be going back to kind of some of my patented threads that a lot of people know me for. So yeah, feel free to go check me out. And, if you got any questions on the UN score, please feel free to, hit me up on Twitter. My DMs are open. And yeah, appreciate you having me on, man. This was a blast.
Yeah, we had a great time. I know bigz is probably kicking himself in the ass right now for having some technical difficulties, but that's what happens, right? And we get around those things, and we really appreciate you having you on here, man. And we hope to continue this partnership and do more stuff as a collaboration in the future, because you're a bright mind and one of the best up and comers in this industry, and it's great to see you flourish, man. So yeah, okay, guys.
Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Remember to like and subscribe to the Fantasy Football Plus Network, because we're always bringing the heat here. You're going to find our stuff on the Dynasty Pulse on that network, and we're also going to be doing a little collaboration with the Undroppables, and we're going to be running this on that platform as well. So stay tuned for that. And for everybody on the Fantasy Football Plus Network, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Dynasty Pulse.